Amazing discovery. Soldier and K-9 expose unexpected truth behind little girl's heartfelt whisper. The first thing Sergeant Jake Thompson noticed when he returned to his Midwestern hometown was the silence, an eerie contrast to the chaos that had consumed his life overseas. Crumbling streets and faded storefronts stared back at him, as if they were too weary to tell their stories. Driving past locked doors, the echoes of gunfire haunted him, reverberating in the back of his mind. His past felt like a weight pressing down, a suffocating reminder of the brotherhood he'd left behind, juxtaposed against the isolation he now faced. Afternoons turned into a slog through memories that flickered like half-hearted ghosts. He took Max, his loyal retired K-9 partner, to the park, a place once filled with life but now just a shadow of what it used to be. The swings creaked softly in the wind, emitting a sadness that stirred within him. As the two walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was an outsider, an intruder in a life that no longer felt like his own. In a small clearing, Jake noticed a little girl whispering to Max, her fingers weaving through his fur, sharing secrets that only the dog could understand. He stood back, the innocence radiating from her drawing him in. When she turned her head, catching sight of him, the light in her brown eyes sparked something in Jake, a flicker of warmth in his icy reality. She introduced herself as Lily and without hesitation, revealed her heartfelt wish to help her sick mom, bedridden for months. The gravity of her determination struck him, creating an unexpected swell in his chest. A surge of empathy washed over him as he agreed to help her with her science project for the school fair. As they brainstormed ideas late into the night, laughter mixed with the demons haunting Jake's mind. He felt a deepening connection to this little girl and her resilient spirit, while simultaneously wrestling with his own fears. Here was someone in need, and for the first time, he felt the urge to step out of the shadows of his own guilt and trauma. Yet, each moment spent together served as a reminder of his family's economic struggles, the vast gulf between the lives they led and the dreams they held. As the science fair drew closer, corporate giants threatened to pull the funding from their project. Jake found himself standing on a precipice of moral conflict. Should he prioritize his own broken life once dictated by order and a defined path, or risk standing against the tide of ambition for Lily's sake? Pressure brewed around him like a storm. Doubts cascaded down, making him question if he was strong enough to protect her dreams or if he'd retreat into the shadows once more, paralyzed by his own self-doubt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he watched Lily excitedly prepare her project display, the tension in his chest tightened. He held back, watching her youthful exuberance flourish against the backdrop of his own fading dreams. With every sparkling detail she crafted, he felt a knot twist in his stomach. Their shared aspirations felt like a heavy burden, and his fears swirled within him unchecked. What if he crumbled under the weight of uncertainty before the final act? As the fair approached, an urgent call buzzed in his pocket, signaling a threat that could unravel everything they had worked for. Facing a clash that would demand the very essence of his integrity, he stole a look at Lily's eager face, and in that moment, he knew the battle was only just beginning. A knot twisted in Jake's stomach as he processed the incoming call, the sleek smartphone feeling foreign in his hand. It was an unfamiliar number, but the urgency in it rendered him unable to ignore. Silently, he cursed the distractions of a world he barely understood anymore. He took a breath, switching gears from the childlike joy emanating from Lily to the stark reality of the threats looming over their project. He answered, the voice on the other end cold and firm. It delivered finality. The funding was no longer guaranteed. They'd lost the majority of support, dwindling to a mere fraction due to corporate politics. Next week, the fate of their project hung in balance at a board meeting. Jake's heart raced. This wasn't just about a science project, it felt like the culmination of everything he longed to reclaim. "I can't let her down," he muttered under his breath, a mantra that solidified in place of any doubt. As he ended the call, the weight of responsibility settled in. He wasn't just helping a little girl anymore, he was stepping into unknown territory, risking failure as an adult once again. Facing those who made decisions in boardrooms where every number tainted by greed could threaten a child's dream took a different kind of courage, one he needed to find within himself. Lily's laughter rang out as she added the finishing touches to their project, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. He studied her, the sheer belief in her determination, the innocence unfettered by the harsh realities of life. It stirred something dormant within him. The soldier who fought not just for survival but for brotherhood began to emerge from the shadows. Could he leverage that same strength for her? That night, as they finalized the project, Jake reminisced about his service. He remembered the camaraderie, the responsibility, and the way choices in combat could mean life or death. It invigorated him to see a young girl's aspirations hanging on the precipice just as he had once stood for his own brothers. Would he have backed away then? No. He'd charge forward, face the odds, embrace the risk. Why was this different? He studied the progression of their work, equation formulas drafted hastily beside her artistic visuals, and felt a spark of pride ignite. This was the first time in a long while that he felt a flicker of purpose, the kind that slowly peeled away layers of bitterness he'd wrapped around himself. He began to see that his past did not have to define his future. Jake made a decision. He would confront the corporate powers behind the looming decision. He needed not just to prepare Lily but to prepare himself. Standing on that precipice of conflict, he recognized the line was more than personal. "I can't let you down," he said softly, kneeling beside Lily. "We're going to make this happen, I promise." The resolve echoed deep within him as she nodded, her eyes wide with hope that reignited his sense of duty. But with the dawn, it would not merely be about the project anymore, it would be about loyalty, the fight for ideals, and confronting the past with resolve. When that meeting approached, Jake would need to bring more than just words. He would need the fierce spirit of the soldier he once was, reshaped anew. As they continued to work, Jake felt an awakening part of himself return, one that propelled him into action rather than retreat. He could already envision the boardroom, the faces that would confront him, and the decision that threatened to strip away the hope he dared to harbor. But what he didn't know was how far these questions would lead him, and whether he was truly prepared to stand against the currents that had threatened to drown him. The next move loomed heavy on his mind. It wasn't just a fight for funding, but a reckoning with his own fears. He inhaled deeply, readying himself for an upcoming confrontation with forces that remained unseen but tangible in their threat. It was time to reclaim the life he once envisioned, not just for himself, but for the girl who believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. Jake woke with the sunrise spilling gold across the room, but the warmth did little to dissolve the impending cold sweat of anxiety pooling in his gut. The board meeting loomed ahead, a specter of corporate indifference masking its sharp teeth behind polished conference tables. This was not just another obligation, it was a trial by fire that would demand the very best of him. He would have to confront not only the suits who made decisions from their lofty perches but also the voices of doubt echoing in his mind. He quietly slid into his well-worn sneakers, their familiarity grounding him. With each step toward the kitchen, he rehearsed his approach to the looming confrontation. Poised as a soldier preparing for battle, not of guns and grenades, but of ideals and commitment. His memories flickered through his mind like old film reels, days spent in the field honing skills, the brotherhood formed with whispered oaths to never abandon one another. Those men had believed in him, perhaps it was time he believed in himself again. The smell of coffee permeated the air, pulling him from a distant reverie. As he sipped the bitter fluid, he glanced at the makeshift project in the center of the living room, Lily's bright colors bleeding through scientific diagrams, symbols of her energy and enthusiasm. In that moment, Jake realized that the stakes were higher than he had previously acknowledged. She was counting on him, this wasn't merely about a project, it was about hope, dreams, and perhaps, his own redemption. He called Lily down for breakfast. Her face lit up the moment she entered, hair disheveled but spirit unyielded. She chattered about her plans, her contagious excitement filling the space between them. As they ate, he watched her, absorbing her confidence like a sponge. She didn't perceive the looming shadows of failure, she only saw possibilities adorned with vibrant colors. It ignited something raw inside him, the will to fight not only for her dream but for his own resurrection. After breakfast, they gathered their materials, and Jake drove toward the corporate complex. The physical act of steering the car felt significant, as if he could also steer his path forward. Each passing building loomed larger, but he found strength in a singular focus. He could not allow corporate machinations to extinguish the hope he had witnessed in Lily's eyes. When he parked, a wave of vertigo washed over him. The sleek facade of the corporate headquarters felt like a fortress, guarding against the very essence of humanity he sought to defend. He inhaled deeply, forcing his heart to steady. He straightened his back and reminded himself that he had been in the presence of far worse fears. The challenge looming before him deserved no less. Courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was the decision to confront that fear head-on. As he crossed the threshold into the building, the stark reality of the corporate environment enveloped him. The high ceilings, glass walls, and muted tones, everything designed to strip away individuality. He felt out of place, like a misplaced cog in a vast machine. Yet, he anchored himself in determination. In the briefing room, the board members emerged one by one, faces cold and blank, resembling unfeeling statues. As they settled into their seats, Jake glimpsed their expressions, disinterest layered over concealed disdain. But what if instead of yielding to their indifference, he could spark curiosity with the story behind their project? What if he revealed the depth of Lily's inspiration? It was time to craft his narrative, revealing the importance of the project not just in numbers but in emotional resonance. He steadied himself, each breath a cadence pushing him forward. Just then, a voice interrupted his thoughts, sharp and unwavering. "Mr. Dawson, you have 5 minutes to present. Are you ready?" The room shifted, and they turned their attention toward him. All the weight of responsibility pressed down, yet in that moment, a flame ignited inside him. He was standing on the precipice, ready to deliver not just a pitch but a piece of his heart. And as he began to speak, doubt clawed internally. What if they rejected his vision? But the deeper fear surfaced. What if he didn't try? The moment felt crucial, the stakes impossibly high. Jake's journey had reached a pivotal point. Would he reclaim his purpose, or would he falter in the face of rejection? With each word, he pushed against the tide. He had no choice but to plunge headlong into the unknown, where the outcome might challenge everything he believed in. But beyond these walls, amidst the looming decisions, what unforeseen truths awaited him once these 5 minutes drew to a close? Jake stood at the edge of the presentation podium, heart racing as the sharp gaze of the board poured over him, a collective force piercing through his resolve. The words he had practiced, memorized, and even hoped to elevate into something beautiful now felt like paper against a roaring fire. Would they see competence or weakness in him? He began with the numbers, raising the project's projected outcomes in revenue, the growth potential anchored in the development of Lily's innovation. Yet as he spoke, he felt the emotional thread of his narrative dissipating into corporate jargon. He was losing them. A quick glance at their expressions confirmed his fears. Disengagement swirled in their eyes, mirroring the confusion intertwining within himself. And then he thought of Lily again, the paint-splattered diagrams, the laughter that echoed in their morning conversation, her unwavering belief in her vision. A jolt of energy surged through him, overwhelming the clenching dread. He was not just a presenter, he was a father, tasked with breathing life into the dream of a child while navigating the vast terrain of corporate skepticism. "Let me tell you about why this matters," Jake interjected, cutting through the sterile atmosphere. "This isn't just a project, it's a chance to inspire hope. My daughter, Lily, came up with this concept, driven by her desire to change the world. It represents possibility, not just for us, but for every child who believes they can make a difference. As his words flowed, he noticed a subtle change. Eyes flickered with curiosity, shuffling papers paused as the board members leaned in. Jake's pulse quickened with inhibitions unraveling. He wove in stories of her passion, the countless hours spent outlining diagrams across the kitchen table, the nights he spent nurturing her visions while silently questioning his own. "I know this approach is unorthodox," he continued, feeling the rhythm of his heart synchronize with the flickering interest of his audience. "But what if we married ambition with emotion? What if we really marketed not just a product but a dream? Lily's dream. We can break down barriers, inspire communities, imagine how transformative that could be." Suddenly, the emotional foundation he'd laid felt sturdy beneath him. He was no longer a cog but a conduit channeling Lily's voice, a force that demanded respect. The uncertainty of their reactions rumbled at the edges of his anticipation, but he pressed on, driven by a newfound clarity. As he concluded, he met their gazes with unyielding resolve. For the first time since entering the room, he felt unshackled not just from doubt, but from the need for validation. In this moment, he embraced uncertainty as part of progress. The air crackled with tension as the silence draped over the room. It felt like a lifetime, suspended, as the board members exchanged glances. A murmur rippled through their ranks, accompanied by discerning nods. He barely caught snippets of dialogue, but one phrase sliced through the noise, a reference to his authenticity. With a thrill of cautious optimism swelling in his chest, Jake realized he had stepped beyond his fears. The stakes had morphed from a dispassionate pitch into a visceral connection with his daughter's aspirations. Yet, as he stepped away from the podium, the looming uncertainty of their judgment loomed heavier than before. What exactly would they decide? Would his gamble bear fruit, or was this merely a fleeting spark extinguished by corporate lethargy? As the board reconvened to deliberate, Jake felt the electricity of potential unraveling within him. Change had not solely been about convincing them, it had awakened something dormant in him, a connection to the fervor of belief. But the true test lay ahead. The outcome of this meeting could alter the trajectory of their dreams, both his and Lily's. His fingers drummed against the armrest as he waited, and in that moment, the reality gripped him. Had he truly reconciled everything within himself, or was he still a soldier caught in an unwinnable battle? As the door to the meeting room creaked open, all eyes turned to him again, and Jake could feel the weight of those unspoken decisions hanging in the air. Would his bravery foster change, or would it merely echo unanswered? Jake's heart thudded as the board members filed back into the conference room, their expressions a mix of calculated composure and unspoken judgment. Had his plea been powerful enough? Each face held secrets he longed to interpret, yet fear gnawed at him. What if their interpretations were purely pragmatic, void of the emotional connection he had fought so hard to establish? As the chairman, a stern figure with defined wrinkles etched by countless deliberations, cleared his throat, Jake braced himself. Had he truly opened a door, or had he unwittingly sealed his and Lily's dreams behind corporate conservatism? "Jake," the chairman's voice echoed in the hollow room, "let's talk about your proposal. While we appreciate the emotional narrative, we must address the financial implications you've presented. The company needs to maintain stability, especially with current market trends." Stability. The word hung between them, heavy and oppressive. It felt like a reminder that beneath his layers of advocacy lay the undeniable truth. Numbers mattered, even if they felt sterile compared to the vibrancy of Lily's vision. Jake's mind raced. Could he reconcile this dichotomy between heart and strategy? "Thank you for your feedback," Jake replied, an unexpected steadiness creeping into his voice. "But I believe stability shouldn't just stem from numbers on a page. It should come from the passion and innovation that drive those numbers. Lily's approach isn't merely a suggestion, it's a paradigm shift." The board listened, but he could feel excitement morphing into skepticism again, awakening the ghosts of doubt he thought he had buried. Their eyes hardened slightly, prompting another memory to bubble within him, the way Lily transformed each gloomy rainy day into a canvas of creativity. She saw potential around each corner, turning mundane moments into a spark of inspiration. Could he channel that same fervor? What if, he continued, we were willing to take calculated risks that let us lead rather than follow? Could we ignite enthusiasm, both from the marketplace and internally? Enthusiasm that drives growth not just for today but for tomorrow? He caught the flash of doubt in the eyes of one board member, a young woman who had appeared supportive during the presentation. The flicker reminded him of how often he had let self-doubt water down his aspirations. She was a reflection of the identical fear he felt within. How could his daughter's dream become a reality if everyone clung to safety nets, avoiding the risks that sometimes flowed through creativity? The chairman nodded, but skepticism still edged his features. And if it fails? What would we tell our investors? The question hung heavily, seeping into Jake's thoughts like ink blotting through paper. What would they tell investors? He had danced too long on the precipice of uncertainty. It was time to ground himself in the facts that could lead him to a truly revolutionary path. Isn't that an opportunity? Jake responded, the words spilling forth before he could tether them. Every risk holds a lesson, every setback a chance for reflection. What if we told them about our courage, our commitment to innovation, and our dedication to growth alongside our children's dreams? He could see the board's reactions shift. Some eyebrows were raised in intrigue, but his inner voice urged caution. Were they warming up to the idea, or simply investigating another facet of the same coin? Advancing this proposal to the next phase isn't just a matter of finances, but a matter of belief, he continued, feeling the electricity of hope ripple through him as he summoned all the courage he had mustered that day. Let us show Lily and the world that we can dream boldly. As he concluded, Jake felt an urgent thrill course through him, an awareness of his own growth. He was not only advocating for Lily's vision but carving a path toward self-acceptance. This journey had unearthed something profound within him, a reservoir of strength previously concealed under layers of doubt and fear. The chairman leaned back, deliberating. And the air thickened with anticipation. Jake realized that regardless of the outcome of this encounter, he had stripped away layers of expectation, branding an evolution that had begun to define him. But just as hope reached for clarity, a weighty thought punctuated the atmosphere. What if they rejected him? What if all his progress had merely led to another dead end? The board's murmurs blended into a singular drumroll of his own fears as he caught the glint of sincerity in that supportive board member's eyes. Could she be the key to unlocking a new door? Then came the chairman's next words, a decisive pivot in the meeting that took Jake's breath away. Let us set a pilot project to test the waters, but I want to ensure your commitment not just to Lily's concept, but to the work that will follow. The moment shimmered before him like a mirage solidifying into reality. Would he rise to the occasion, not just as a father, but as a leader of change? He felt both exhilarated and daunted by the challenge ahead. As the board members continued to hash out the details of the pilot, Jake questioned whether this was merely the beginning of a larger battle yet to unfold, one that he must embrace in order to not only keep Lily's dream alive, but also to discover the limits of his potential. Because the true test was not just what the board decided, but how far he was willing to push himself for the dream they both believed in. Jake inhaled deeply, steeling himself for what lay ahead, ready to confront the unclear terrain he had ventured into. And then came the final question from the chairman, aimed directly at Jake: are you prepared to take on the leadership this concept will require? His answer would not only shape Lily's future but redefine his own at the same time. Jake's pulse quickened as silence engulfed the room after the chairman's question. The weight of those words pressed heavily against him, an unyielding challenge to prove not only his dedication but also his identity as both a father and a leader. He had danced with the edge of his fear long enough, a fear that had often made him second-guess his instincts and desires. The time for introspection was over. Now, he needed to act. He said, his voice steadier than he felt. The electricity of conviction powered through his words, but beneath the surface, doubt flickered ominously. Did he truly mean it? Leadership entailed responsibility, accountability, a monumental shift in his current understanding of who he was, and failure was a heavy price. The board's faces remained inscrutable, hiding their reactions behind professional masks. Jake felt the pull of anticipation, both invigorating and terrifying. They would test him, undoubtedly acting as judges weighing his every move. He could no longer rely solely on Lily's dream. He had to interlace his ambitions with hers and show the board that the future they envisioned was within reach. "Let us discuss the next steps then," the chairman replied, breaking the impasse. "If we're moving forward with this pilot project, we need a clear roadmap. You'll need to articulate how this will work operationally." Jake nodded, biting back the rising tide of uncertainty. Roadmap. Strategy. Operation. He had lived in those realms at one time but had distanced himself from the business jargon that left him feeling chained. Now, those very terms loomed before him like a fortress he had to infiltrate. Could he craft a direction that was both innovative and pragmatic? His thoughts flickered back to Lily. The way she approached her projects with childlike wonder yet a methodical ability to see them through to fruition. Perhaps there was a balance to be struck, integrating her creativity with the structural rigor that the board demanded. "I can develop a framework that combines our vision with measurable goals," he finally volunteered, a spark of clarity igniting within him. "We'll establish clear criteria for success, metrics that not only gauge production but also capture feedback from our stakeholders, most importantly, the children we aim to inspire." In that moment, Jake realized a profound piece of the puzzle. He was not simply chasing his daughter's dream, he was reinforcing it with substance, creating a foundation on which creativity could thrive. As he expounded on the specifics of potential outreach programs, partnerships with educational institutions, and feedback loops, a sense of purpose surged in him. This was no longer just about a concept, it required execution, alignment, and tenacity. As he spoke, he could sense the board's attention sharpening. The young woman who had first sparked his confidence leaned forward, nodding as he referenced her earlier insights. With each detail he filled in, he dispelled some of his own fear, and that drove him deeper into a newfound understanding of his capabilities. Jake could feel walls he'd built against his ambitions slowly crumbling to dust. "But," he added, wanting to clarify the complexity of paradoxes he'd witnessed, "we must remain mindful that data alone cannot spark innovation. Stories, like those Lily inspires, connect us to our mission. Those narratives are what drive passion, and passion creates investment." A murmur of agreement rippled through the members, revealing that his integration of emotion and logic was striking a chord. It rekindled hope within him, the possibility that he could serve as a conduit between the heart of the project and the calculations of commerce. He was beginning to see his journey not just as a solitary path, but a collaborative one, embodying both his growth and Lily's aspirations. As the meeting continued, plans materialized around him, transforming ideas into actionable items. His vision was growing tangible, yet, in this triumph, he felt the first twinges of fear return, not about the project itself, but about the leadership role he was stepping into. Would he falter when push came to shove? And just when Jake felt the momentum swelling, a sharp remark from another member sliced through the excitement. "Jake, you seem confident, but what will you do when the project faces obstacles?" Leadership isn't just about ideas, it's about navigating failure. Their challenging gaze lingered on him, demanding a response that could either solidify or dismantle the credibility he had just built. The question hung like an anchor, testing the very resolve he had touted. Jake inhaled deeply, gathering his thoughts. He had to confront a personal truth: the fear of failure had often paralyzed him. It was time he openly acknowledged that facing failure was part of the journey to success. Would he admit that vulnerability now, or find a way to foster a resilience that could rise from the ashes of setbacks? "Obstacles are inevitable," Jake finally said, conviction refilling his chest. "But it's how we respond to those obstacles that defines our leadership. I will adapt, iterate, and I'll gather support from both my colleagues and the community." We'll learn and push through, together. Reflecting on those words, he understood the profound evolution he was undergoing, not only shedding the cloak of doubt but also embracing the chaos of growth. As the discussion collided between strategic planning and this newfound determination, Jake realized the climax of his internal struggle was close. Leaning into the challenges that lay ahead, he felt the full weight of impending responsibility. As he looked around and met the eyes of the board members, unguarded and present, a new question surged within him: could he carry the burden of leadership with grace, despite the inevitable failures yet to come? And with that thought, the meeting pressed onward, the tightening grip of uncertainty signaling that his journey was only just beginning. Jake's heart raced as he absorbed the board's mixed reactions to his declaration. He felt a fierce mix of reassurance and anxiety grip him as he realized that he was standing on the precipice of something significant. The lingering question, still exposed like a nerve, hovered at the forefront of his mind. With momentum on his side, he leaned into it. He would no longer allow fear to dictate his path. After the meeting, Jake exited the conference room, feeling the grip of formality release him. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the hum of offices a stark contrast to the charged silence from moments earlier. He couldn't shake the knot in his stomach. The thrill of validation he had felt was now clouded with doubt. Could he truly lead this project through turbulent waters? The next few days became a whirlwind as Jake delved into creating the roadmap. He broke everything down into manageable components, scheduling meetings with teams, gathering insights from potential partners, and drafting communication for stakeholders. Each task, though daunting, invigorated him. He found solace in the organization, but shadows of self-doubt still flickered at the edges of his thoughts. In the quiet of his home office, surrounded by sketches of Lily's dreams, he experienced a powerful realization: he was no longer simply building a plan, he was constructing a legacy, a bridge between his aspirations and his daughter's. But with this clarity came the weight of responsibility. Leadership, he pondered, was less about having all the answers and more about inviting collaboration and trust. One evening, after a particularly long day, he sat quietly, reflecting on the new projections and budgets he had pored over. He felt a twinge of inadequacy gnawing at him. How could he transform this vision into reality when his own journey had been riddled with hesitations and failures? He took a deep breath and picked up his phone, scrolling through messages until he stumbled across a text from Lily. "Hey Dad. I had a dream about the project. What if we could make a space for kids to tell their stories? Just like how I tell you mine." Suddenly, the revelation washed over him: the project wasn't just about metrics or resources. It was about the kids, their creativity, their voices. He understood now that empowering children to share their narratives would be foundational. Stories from kids would combat the hurdles he anticipated, providing invaluable insights and perspectives. Encouraged, he set out on a new mission that night. He reached out to local schools, encouraging their participation in the pilot project. Instead of viewing it merely as an initiative to measure success, he pivoted his focus toward collective storytelling. How could they ensure that the children's voices resonated through every aspect of the endeavor? The days rolled into a week filled with open dialogues and brainstorming sessions. As he facilitated conversations, he felt a shift in his role. He wasn't just steering the ship, but rather, he was creating spaces for others to contribute their thoughts. For the first time, Jake realized that vulnerability was a strength, not a weakness. Sharing his fears and uncertainties inspired others to do the same. However, the weight of leadership bore down on him as he prepared for the upcoming presentation to the stakeholders. Despite the newfound sense of purpose, a nagging question surfaced: would his approach to integrating children's stories resonate with adults steeped in traditional metrics and figures? That day, he cornered a colleague during lunch. "Do you think our stakeholders will align with this emotional narrative? There's a risk they may see it as fluff, rather than substance." His colleague shrugged, an understanding look crossing her face. "They want results. But if you frame it right, if you show them how engaging children can lead to better outcomes, you'll have a powerful case. Just remember, effective leaders embrace both sides of the spectrum: emotion and logic. With their conversation echoing in his mind, Jake began preparing a compelling presentation that balanced quantitative data with the heartfelt stories he now understood were crucial to the project's success. As he dove into his work, a knock on the door broke his concentration. It was Lily, holding a bright piece of paper. "Dad, I just wrote a story about a girl who runs away to make a club for other kids who feel alone. Can I read it to you?" Her innocent enthusiasm hit him like a wave, stirring something deep within. As she read her story, he recognized the genuine emotion that filled each word. Jake felt inspired, understanding that this was the heartbeat of what he was trying to achieve. "Lily, this is amazing. Do you realize how important your voice is? How many kids can connect with this?" She beamed with pride, and in that moment, he felt the weight he had been carrying lighten just a bit. It became clear that their connection, their shared vision, was more than a mere project. It was a powerful movement waiting to happen. Jake returned to his desk, now fueled with clarity and determination. Yet, just as he was ready to dive into his presentation preparation, a notification from an email pinged loudly on his computer screen, a message from the board. The subject line read, "Final thoughts on the project proposal." An uneasy stirring began in his gut as he read the opening line, "We appreciate your innovative approach, but what could the board possibly be questioning now?" Anxiety clawed at him, but even more, the realization struck: this journey, this entire endeavor, might be on the edge of encountering a confrontation he wasn't prepared for. And there it was, the moment he dreaded. The time had come to face not only their skepticism, but also his growing fear of inadequacy. Would he be able to integrate both the emotional and analytical frameworks he had been championing? Jake's breath quickened as he reread the board's email. The words blurred together, his mind racing. What had he missed? Had he not articulated his vision clearly enough? He felt heat rising in his cheeks, a deep sense of urgency pulling at him. There was no time to dwell on doubt. He ran his fingers through his hair and focused. It was time to prepare for the confrontation that loomed ahead. His analytical side kick-started, evaluating what critical points he needed to emphasize. He quickly jotted down potential objections and the data-driven responses he had prepared. What were their priorities? Financial viability? Community impact? Success stories? Anything he could use to defend the emotional journey he had woven into the project. As he stood up to pace the room, he also considered the human element. How could he demonstrate the importance of children's voices without neglecting the hard numbers? The children's stories were his strongest asset, a thread of authenticity woven through every statistic. Perhaps he could embrace the duality of compassion and logic. He spent the next few hours honing his presentation, seamlessly integrating the data and emotional anecdotes. He envisioned the boardroom, the intimidating faces of the stakeholders, seasoned professionals honed by years of experience. They had established comfort zones, measuring success through traditional methodologies. And yet, they were unfamiliar with his world, the depth of raw stories derived from children. That night, when Jake crawled into bed, he lay awake, mind racing, consumed by possibilities. Could he convey the beauty of a child's narrative to the board? The urgency to ensure their stories were heard weighed heavily on him. He sought a breakthrough, a way to articulate what made a child's experience compelling both emotionally and practically. Within days, the presentation approached with merciless speed. Each morning, Jake rose earlier than normal, his stomach a tight ball as he rehearsed the slides. He prepared for every obscure question he could imagine. Still, lingering doubts circulated in the fog of his mind. What if his proposal didn't resonate? What if they dismissed him outright as naive? The day finally arrived. Jake entered the boardroom, rehearsed and ready, but dull anxiety gnawed at his confidence. As he took his place at the front, he saw the contingent of board members, remarkable achievers, with a willingness to dissect his every word, filling the chairs with steely gazes. The air crackled with tension. Startlingly, during his introduction, the choking sensation of inadequacy threatened to bubble up. He fought against it, immersing himself in the reasoning behind his vision. He introduced the concept of empowering children, taking risks, sharing narratives. The warmth flooded through him as he recalled Lily's excitement and innocence. As he unfolded the layers of storytelling, each tale an ingredient to social change, he pivoted toward practical outcomes, aligning the emotional mission with achievable metrics. Slowly, he observed nods of understanding begin to replace furrowed brows. But just as hope flickered, a board member interrupted, brow knit tightly. "Jake, while these stories are touching, where's the assurance that integrating this narrative approach will yield quantifiable results?" Jake paused. This was at the moment to confront the very critique he dreaded. Instead of retreating into self-doubt, he leaned into the question. He engaged directly. What if we measure engagement in schools? Capture feedback from participants about how this project influences their lives? We can layer these success stories on top of traditional metrics, creating a more holistic view. The board members exchanged glances, and unexpectedly, a glimmer of interest sparked in their eyes. Jake continued, spurred on by their shifting expressions. He shared case studies from similar projects, presenting statistics of success housed within emotional connections, a blend his heart had come to believe. With each passing minute, he felt a burgeoning sense of purpose bloom in him. Leadership wasn't just about proving a point, it was about inviting them into the narrative, letting them feel the weight of every child's untold story. Just as he reached the end of his presentation, a hopeful anticipation settled over the room. But before he could bask in the moment, another board member leaned forward, her expression a mix of intrigue and skepticism. If children's voices are the centerpiece, what contingencies do we have in place for potential criticisms? How do we handle those who believe this has no place in a conventional business model? Her question struck a chord, igniting another wave of self-doubt. What if the layer of vulnerability he had built faltered under scrutiny? Would the board see him as the passionate advocate he aspired to be, or merely as an idealist? Jake inhaled deep and steady, anchoring his voice to the heartbeat of the project. We embrace those criticisms. This approach fosters authenticity and resilience, qualities I believe we can leverage to bolster our reputation. I have drafted responses to potential setbacks, and I'm confident we can adapt as needed. A mix of apprehension and curiosity rippled through the room. Jake had shifted the energy, but now it hung in a precarious state. He stepped away from the presentation table and invited dialogue, shifting from presenting strategy to engaging in discussion down the path of confrontation, discovering negotiation in the space between fear and advocacy. As they began an intense exchange, Jake grappled with the tension spiraling within him. He felt the weight of leadership once again. Could he truly stand by his vision if the board remained skeptical? And with that thought, he pondered what would happen if he became the very embodiment of that vision, risking everything he held dear. Did he have the courage to not only advocate for the children's stories but also defend them against the prevailing currents of tradition? The stakes were rising, as were the vulnerabilities he had come to embrace. He was no longer just an advocate, he was on the front lines of a potential battle that could define not just his project but his own evolution as a leader. In that moment, Jake understood, the confrontation he long feared had begun, and what lay ahead might reveal depths of strength he had never known existed. Jake stared at the board members, his stomach tightening as he sensed the pendulum of persuasion swinging precariously. The air buzzed with uncertainty, yet he found resolve within the swirling chaos. He had faced numerous challenges before, but this felt integral to his identity. Would the board acknowledge the authenticity of his vision, allowing room for the creativity he believed was necessary, or would they stifle it, pushing him back into a box he had long believed he had escaped? The dialogue intensified, and each question stirred deeper reflections within him. A board member raised concerns about financial sustainability, pressing him on how emotional narratives would translate into tangible profit. The question hung heavy in the air, the implication clear. Jake was attempting to convince them to divert from the comfortable, predictable path of spreadsheets and forecasts. He drew in a steady breath, reminding himself that this was not just about defending his project, it was about embodying the very principles he advocated for: the risks of growth, the confidence to tread unfamiliar terrain. What if we viewed this not merely through a lens of profit but as an investment in future leaders? By empowering children now, we shape a community that could yield untold benefits years down the line. Isn't that worth considering? Eyes turned towards him, perhaps for the first moment that day, with a flicker of intrigue sparking in their depths. The atmosphere shifted, his words resonated. Jake allowed himself to linger in that moment, drawing strength from it. It was as if the vision he had carved out in solitude began to solidify in the minds of the skeptics before him. Yet, just as a sense of accomplishment began to settle, a voice pulled him back. Another board member tapped his pen against the table. "But Jake, how will we measure success? A beautiful story doesn't guarantee behavioral change or community engagement." The question felt like a punch, but instead of wilting, Jake felt the fraying threads of his anxieties weave tightly into something formidable, a tapestry of data and narrative woven with purpose. We can implement metrics that assess engagement and trust levels among the children participating in the storytelling. For every success story shared, we can track engagement rates in their school performance and relationship-building skills. Success is not a singular score but a shift in paradigm. The board members' curiosity piqued as they leaned in, and Jake pressed on, sketching out a framework that fused data-driven insights with heartfelt narratives, illuminating each unexpected connection. Each interaction fueled his confidence, pushing him farther away from the shadows of doubt he once lurked in. It was a thrilling dance of intellect and emotion, and he reveled in the freedom of genuine expression. As the conversation expanded, Jake found himself revealing aspects of his own journey, moments when he felt the profound impact of a child's voice and how it had changed his outlook on leadership. The struggles he faced in his past employment and the unyielding skepticism he encountered transformed the focus from being merely a presenter to becoming a companion in a shared journey towards understanding. With renewed determination, he proclaimed that every metric, every bit of data they would analyze, needed to stem from the same spirit of exploration that had driven him to initiate this project. "We can shatter perceptions with hard truths rooted in emotional narratives," he added, a newfound conviction coloring his voice. But as the dialogue circled back to financial stability, the same board members' brows knitted. "Perhaps, Jake, you underestimate the hold numbers have on governance? These are difficult waters to navigate." The sentiment echoed within him. He knew the apprehension resonated not only with the board but within himself. The anxiety of financial success weighed heavy, stirring doubts of how he could feasibly chart the intertwined journeys of emotional authenticity and hard metrics. He confronted that critical reflection. How could he navigate both worlds without losing himself in the fray? It was a dilemma he hadn't anticipated, yet it solidified the importance of courage in his advocacy. He realized being seen as a visionary meant being ready to engage in the unavoidable complexities of leadership. Just as he opened his mouth to articulate that growing realization, a board member interjected, sharp and direct. "What if you fail, Jake? What's the backup plan?" The question landed. What if the blend of emotion and data failed to create the impact he envisioned? Would he reconsider his approach? Or worse, would he fold into the rigidity of the traditional mold he had fought hard to reshape? His heart raced. He was treading deeper than he had ever intended, facing the specter of doubt that loomed over every decision. He took a moment, thoroughly weighing the palpable tension before him, a chance to recalibrate. The essence of leadership was confronting the unknown, holding fast to one's conviction even amid uncertainty. "I'll craft a plan based on transparency. If things don't perform as predicted, we will pivot and adapt as a team," he offered, feeling the resolve slipping back into his core. Jake could feel the focus shifting again, but doubt lingered in the air, vibrant and alive. They were listening, but he needed to drive the narrative home. His belief must prevail against the formidable obstacles surrounding him. As the discussion continued, he moonlighted between vulnerability and resilience, knowing fully well that each step forward was as much about his individual emergence into leadership as it was about the children whose stories drove his mission. He stood tall, eager to unveil his final points, but deep down, the path ahead felt riddled with shadows. Did he have the tenacity to shepherd this vision beyond the boardroom? As the tension rose, Jake sensed the confrontation was only beginning. It felt less like a conclusion and more like a path into uncharted territory of his own self-discovery. With that weight upon him, Jake realized there was a far greater challenge within that would need to unfold, and the confrontation with his own fears and limitations was soon to surface. The question remained, could he sustain this journey of insight, or would he retreat into the safety of the familiar as the stakes elevated? Jake emerged from the boardroom feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had stepped into the unknown, confronting the fears that once immobilized him. The vivid discussions reverberated in his mind, their essence igniting a sense of determination he hadn't experienced in years. Today was the day he transformed from just a father and an advocate into a leader committed to a powerful cause. As he drove home, the sunlight streamed in through the windows, illuminating the path ahead while casting shadows on the haunting reminders of his past. Each passing mile affirmed his resolve. He would bring Lily's vision to life, no matter the obstacles. In the rearview mirror of his mind, he saw the images of self-doubt and resignation fade into the distance. That evening, sitting down with Lily over dinner, he could see her excitement simmering beneath the surface. "Did you win?" she asked, eyes wide with anticipation. Jake managed a smile. "I think we made an impact. I told them all about your project and how important it is. And guess what? They're considering a pilot program." Her laughter rang out, breaking through his uncertainty. In Lily's joy, he found a reassurance that bolstered his spirits. They began sketching what the project would look like, a space where children's ideas could flourish, stories could emerge, and innovation could take form. Days turned into weeks, and as the pilot program launched, Jake felt an exhilarating shift in the atmosphere around him. Schools engaged, children came together, and the stories flowed like fresh water. As each tale unfolded, he meticulously incorporated feedback to bridge the emotional narratives with tangible outcomes, helping him refine the initiative with precision. In time, data began to reveal trends: improvements in school attendance, increased engagement levels, and a growing network of community support. The project became a beacon of hope, reminding Jake at every turn that he was not fighting this battle alone. He had an army of children taking up their own banners, ready to share their pasts, their dreams, and their futures. Yet, as the pilot thrived, he was summoned back into the boardroom for the final assessment. This time, he felt prepared. The initial meeting had forged him into a more confident version of himself, one ready to stand firm in the face of scrutiny, ready to advocate for both the children's voices and the strategic vision that grounded their efforts. The board members gathered around the polished table with palpable anticipation, glances exchanging the weight of the moment. "Jake," the chairman began, "we're impressed with the outcome of the pilot. The initial data shows promising potential. Can you walk us through your next steps?" Jake inhaled sharply. He felt the press of time on his shoulders but managed a reassuring nod. Here was his opportunity not merely to present data but to connect their project back to its heart, the children. As he presented the evolving metrics interspersed with the stories behind them, he could feel the tension ease. He had grown far beyond his initial trepidation. The juxtaposition of emotion and data birthed synergy, a complete cycle of understanding. The articulation of each child's experience resonated with the board members. The narrative landscape shifted, drawing them into a world full of possibility woven together by young voices. He concluded with a powerful vision of how this initiative could reshape community structures, creating a long-lasting impact that transcended mere metrics. And then, as the meeting culminated, he listened as the chairman leaned forward, eyebrows raised in palpable intrigue. "Jake, your integration of both emotional engagement and quantitative measures is a breakthrough. This could genuinely evolve into something significant for the company. We'll move forward with full endorsement." A wave of elation crashed over him, warm and validating. This was what he had envisioned, a partnership to elevate the stories of young dreamers, crafted through the experience and strength he had long sought to reclaim. For the first time, confidence surged like a crescendo through his body. He had conquered his fears and transformed them into a creative force. Later that day, Jake sat at the kitchen table, enveloped in the evening light that spilled through the windows. Lily bounced in from the living room, chatty about new ideas she had for future storytelling projects. As she nestled beside him, he could see his reflection in her eyes, the shared dreams, their intertwined aspirations, and the true bond of family renewed. "Dad," she said shyly, "do you think we can help kids tell their stories forever?" He smiled, words bubbling up in him like an uncontainable surge of pride. "Absolutely, Lily. We're going to change the world, one story at a time." In that moment, Jake understood that this journey was not just about reclaiming his own identity as a leader. It was about crafting a legacy that intertwined strength, vulnerability, and purpose through a new generation of storytellers, one that embraced hope, creativity, and the tireless drive to make a difference. As he wrapped his arm around Lily, a deep satisfaction settled within him. He had not only accomplished a professional transformation, he had uncovered the essence of who he was: a father, a leader, and an unwavering beacon for the children whose dreams he would continue to champion. You need to subscribe now to our channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories like this. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and let us continue sharing these inspiring journeys. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Your voice matters in our community. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because you never know who might find the motivation to overcome their obstacles. Don't wait even one more second.